Hey everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Sam Shaw and I'm the founder of Wall Street Mastermind. This is Wall Street Mastermind's Elevate program, where we take our flagship coaching program and give it away for free to high potential students who are currently in a difficult financial situation. The goal of this show is to first and foremost give these students the coaching and guidance that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise and help them break into investment banking. Of course, we also want to give all of you an in-depth look at how to go about your own investment banking preparation process the right way, so that you can model it after the same proven methodology and strategies that we've used to place over 90% of our students into investment banking across every single bulge bracket and elite boutique bank over the last several years. With hundreds of thousands of applicants competing to break into investment banking globally each year, our team only has the bandwidth to help a very small percentage of you. So my hope is that this show helps all of you, even if you aren't able to directly participate in our program and work with us. So let's get to it. In this session, we reviewed the initial draft of Ximena's networking contact log and strategize on which banks she wants to target, as well as how to set goals for how many bankers she should be reaching out to throughout her networking process. We also discuss who she should target to get better conversion rates for the amount of effort that she's going to have to put in.
I know last time we finished your resume, right? And then so that looks pretty good now, which is important. And then I think the next thing that we should really pay attention to is your networking process, right? So I want to kind of go through that today. Have you finished our networking module, like the entire thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So then, like kind of like how our process works and things like that then, right? So like, how long have you been networking, or how long has it been since you started networking? Is it like pretty recent, or?
To get like very good into it, I think I started, I think about maybe like a couple weeks ago is when I most started, mostly when I got to here to in-person classes where I've been doing a lot of like with the networking, but also like NYU has some like Violet network things that you can contact people with. So I've been doing a bit through that.
Got it. So like this contact log that I see, so I know you have, looks like 37 people on here. These are people that you've spoken to, or just people that you reached out to or plan on reaching out to?
So far, no, only like 2 of those have turned into conversations. The rest have been like emailed, except like I have a lot of Bank of Americas. And since this morning, a lot of them, I think the last part of the email, they're coming back like they're not going through.
Oh, the emails are not going through.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think I have to change the end of the format for Bank of America.
Right. Okay. Instead of bofaml.com, just bofA.com. Yeah. So by the way, what I did just now was, I think your filters weren't working correctly, if I'm not mistaken. So I just reset it. Actually, no, it didn't even work. It's probably because there's extra row here. So let's delete that. So the way you can tell if your filters are working or not is like you should be able to see like this green line in the range that is working for. So if I highlight the entire header row, let's see here. So I'm going to hire from BA to PA, data, create a filter. Okay, now you see it's the green line here that shows you the part that's selected, right? You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So before, the green line was only like halfway through, maybe down to like Hazard. So that means when you run the filters, it's not going to pick up the rest of these, right? So
yeah,
just fixing that real quick. And then now, like if you go and add new rows, it should, as long as you're adding it directly below the last row in the table, it should continue to expand. So for example, test, and you see how the green line moved down. So now it's the additional row, so you can just keep adding here. See that? This green line will continue to move down with it. So, but okay, so most of these are just people that you're reaching out to. I think the first step is like, we probably got to create a bigger list, right?
Yeah.
Because 37 is really not that much, right? So if we really think about the networking funnel, like, you know, I don't think you've reached out to enough people yet for us to have really good data on this, but like, ideally, once you've been doing this for a while, you'll know like you know like roughly what your conversion rate is, right? So like if I send out, for every 10 email I send out, usually how many responses do I get, right? How many of those actually turn into actual conversations, right? And then as you get better and better at having these conversations, like how many bankers do I have to talk to usually for me to, you know, get someone who's like really willing to help me and go out of their way, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I want to track all these things. And once we have a good sense of that, then we can back into, you know, how many people am I going to have to reach out to at this specific bank for me to be able to get the, you know, usually we try to target having at least 2 referrals every single bank, right? I mean, at least one, but if you only have one, sometimes that person doesn't end up following through, or you thought they were going to help you and they're not helping you. And so I like to tell people like, try to get the first one first, and then let's say you have at least one referral at all of your target banks already, then you can go back around a second time and try to get another person just in case, right? It's kind of like when you drive, you have like a backup tire in the trunk in case your tire pops, right? So you want to have some redundancy. But what I would do is we need to first like come up with, I think, the list of banks that you want to apply to. And then so like for you at a minimum to start, we're probably targeting all the bulge bracket and all the elite boutique banks, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just gonna write that off to the side here for now, but Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, who else? Citi, Barclays, Credit Suisse, UBS, Deutsche, Bank of America, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think there's only 9 of them, if I'm not mistaken, right? So also the elite boutiques, Evercore, Centerview, Lazard, Moelis, Greenhill, what else? Guggenheim, Perella Weinberg. I'll look this up real quick. I know there should be like 19 or 20 in total, but my memory is failing me.
I think
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lazard, Moelis, PJT. What were you gonna say?
I think Rothschild, right?
Rothschild, yep. Guggenheim, Greenhill, Jeffries. Jeffries is not really, but it's up there. So,
Catalyst.
Alice is more tech focused, but great firm. We'll just include Jeffries. They're technically not only boutique, but they're quite good. UBS, Houlihan, Loki, probably won't include them. Okay. But it doesn't really matter, right? It's like that's um wow, so slow. Okay. You get the point. So let's say we do that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 plus 9, that's like 21. So we have like 21 banks here, right? Um, right now on this list, I see one, there's one Morgan Stanley, okay. But I see Goldman, Morgan Stanley, Lazard, and B of A, and that's it, right? So, and you have, call it like 10 people from Goldman, one from MS, a handful from Lazard, and a bunch from B of A, right? Um,
Mhm.
is there a reason why you have so many more B of A people? Is that just
No, I was just, when I was on LinkedIn, I was just finding a lot of people through that, but there's no reason.
so I
I was
would,
gonna eventually do like
yeah,
hopefully a ratio for all of them.
yeah. So I would like I would go and like, start with a list of banks and then I would go and find like a certain amount. Like let's say, even if you just say, okay, I'm going to start with 10 people at each bank on my list. Okay. It doesn't have to be a lot. If you have 10 people on 20 banks, that's 200 people to start,
Mhm.
which I think is a good starting point. That's going to grow over time as you talk to more people.
Mhm.
But so you have 10 per bank. And then the other thing to pay attention to is like, okay, if I look at what group they're in, um, you want to try to talk to people who are bankers, right? So I see like asset management analyst, private wealth management, portfolio management director, like portfolio asset, like a lot of these people aren't really in banking, right? Sales trading analysts. And so if they're not in investment banking, they're not going to most likely be very helpful in terms of helping you get an investment banking job, right?
Yeah.
So I would try to find people that are actually in investment banking. Um, you if you have someone in like on the diversity recruiting team or whatever, I think that's fine because obviously you qualify for that, right? But the point is, you want to think about, can this person actually help me get to where I want to go, right? So that's one thing. Like I would be more selective here, especially for a lot of these huge banks. Like there's so many bankers at each of these banks. Like you should not have trouble finding people, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Um, and then also for the title, like I would try to I would try to have like a good mix of people with different seniority levels, right? So a lot of people like they only talk to analysts or they mostly talk to analysts because analysts are like the least intimidating, I guess, and the closest to you in age. But you just gotta understand, like the senior folks are gonna have more influence usually, right? Not that the junior people can't help you at all, but typically if a junior person is gonna help you, um, like beyond just, having like giving you advice during a conversation, it's just usually like not super specific anyway, because the conversation is pretty short, but like otherwise, if a junior person is actually going to like help you get an interview or whatever, in my experience, they have to be involved with like the on-campus recruiting team. Like a lot of schools, especially if it's a target school, they'll have like an NYU recruiting team, for example, which is made up of NYU alum at various levels. So there will be like some senior bankers on there, but there will also be junior bankers on it. It's like, so if you talk to the junior banker that's on that team, then they're gonna have more influence, right? So that's the other thing, is like also maybe trying to find out if there is an NYU recruiting team
Mhm.
at each of these banks. More often than not, there probably will be. And then if there is, um, figuring out like who's actually on that team. Like even if you speak to an alum from your school, who's not technically on that team, if you
Mhm.
ask them if they know the person that's on that team, like a lot of times they'll know, right? And then they'll be able to like point you in the right direction. Like even if they, whether that's like actually connecting you and introducing you to them, or if they even just give you a name, that's all you need, right? As long as you have a
Yeah.
name, you can go find them yourself, right? Um, and then like in terms of connection level, like whether it's cold or warm. So warm is what, just people that were referred to you by someone else that you already know, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so obviously we want to start with those first because they're going to be the most likely to help you, right? I guess the problem is when I look at the warm ones, looks like most of them are not in IB, but that's probably why they're on your list, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so that's fine. I mean, like human capital management, just in HR, she still might be able to help you. These two though, like private wealth and portfolio manager, it might be a little bit harder. I mean, you can always ask them if they know anyone that's in banking. Um, but yeah, and then like, obviously we already showed you how to find their email addresses inside the module, so you know how to do that. LinkedIn, initiate a contact, stage update. Okay, so it looks like this is going back to, well, really most of it started this week, right? October 8th. The rest were okay. So I think that'll be the first step is like, let's create this list. Um, and then once we have a list for all of these banks, we'll also want to kind of prioritize certain banks before other banks, right? So for
Yeah.
example, RBC, we know they already opened their application, right? So I know RBC is not on here, but assuming you want to apply to RBC, then like let's say if we add RBC, then like obviously you probably want to start networking with RBC people first, right?
Mhm.
Um, for the other banks, we probably should go in order of the rough order of when we think they're going to start recruiting, right? So I think like one way to have the figure out the proxy for that, because it can change from year to year, but for the most part, like I don't think it changes too much, right? But you can go and into our Facebook group, the clients only Facebook group. I have a post where I posted like all the summer 2022 internship apps that came out.
Mhm.
And then in the comment section, I actually like timestamped when we added each opportunity, right?
Okay.
So that tells you roughly around what time last year did these applications come out, right?
Okay.
Like for example, we know JP Morgan typically opens on June 1st, right? Goldman Sachs typically opens on July 1st, right? I mean, in fact, you can even do this, like you can even say July 1st, June 1st. Like these just like put down the rough timing
Okay.
that the apps opened in previous years. And then based on that, you can sort these and say, okay, I'm going to start on this list. I'm going to start with RBC first. And then I'm not going to worry about banks like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs until later, right?
Mhm.
Like other banks I know that start pretty early, like Citi tends to start pretty early, right? Guggenheim tends to start pretty early. Some of these elite boutiques start early, like Perella, um, PJT, so on and so forth. The other thing that you have to take into account too is like a lot of them have diversity events, and diversity event recruiting. Like a lot of them will do 2 rounds of recruiting. Like Centerview, I know like they did their diversity round first, and then their non-diversity rounds actually like way later, right?
Mhm.
I think same thing with PJT partners. And so you should also look at that other list, which is like the diversity events that we
Mhm.
had, which I think you've already looked at, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then I will like figure out like, okay, if for some of these banks you're going to be applying to a diversity event, then that date has to be factored into this exercise also, right? Like Goldman, even though their regular app opens on July 1st, I think their diversity recruiting also happens before that. So then maybe the real date for Goldman for you is not July 1st, it's actually something earlier.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So once we have a list, let's say like, let's just start with like 10 per bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make them, people from relevant teams or relevant groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
For you, there should be like enough people from NYU at pretty much every single one of these places. So I would just first filter for uh people at this bank from NYU, right? Like in
Mm-hmm.
fact, you know how to do that on LinkedIn, right?
Yep, that's what I've been using.
Okay. So because then you just go to the bank page, go to
Mm-hmm.
alumni, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we won't go through that here because you already know how to do that. And then once you have a list of 10, have them like kind of spread them out in terms of different levels. Like maybe have I don't know, I'm just making this up. 4 analysts, three associates, like two VPs or directors, and one MD. That's 10
Mm-hmm.
right there, right? And you're gonna have more junior people than senior people because there's just more of them, right?
Yeah.
But like have some diversity, and then let's start reaching out to them like more systematically, right? Like we should set a goal for. I think once you like map out the rough start dates for each of these firms,
Mm-hmm.
and we know how much time we have, then you can map out like, okay, how many emails do I need to send per week,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in the beginning, because we don't really have good data on like what your conversion rate is yet, we should err on the side of sending more emails rather than less because it'll just give us more data faster to figure out what your conversion rate is most likely going to be. And also like if we send more emails and we start getting too many responses, which would be a good problem to have, to be honest, but it probably like if that happens, then we'll just slow it down, right? But if we don't send enough emails in the beginning and and then like we have to like increase the number of emails we send, then we're kind of like we just wasted some time basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um and then for the emails that you send, like do you have templates that you're using already? Okay.
Yeah. In the program. Yeah.
So what I would do is like you should have templates for the first email. And I don't know like when you grab these templates because I updated them um probably like a month or two ago.
Okay.
So like just make sure I would go check in the modules and make sure that you're looking at the latest one. So let me see here. I think it's towards the back. Page 3, probably. Yeah, networking script templates, right? So anyway, I would just like re-download this and make sure that you still have the latest and greatest, right? And then um, you should basically have a template for the initial email you send, a template for the second follow-up email if you don't get back the first time, and then you should have a template for like your third and final email if they don't respond the second time. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
like at a minimum, those 3 templates you need. And then obviously you're gonna need like a thank you email template, which is really easy. Like after every conversation, you're gonna send them a thank you email, right? And I would say like a fifth template is like the follow-up nurture email, which after you've had the initial conversation with them, you're gonna send them periodic updates,
Mm-hmm.
about yourself and just to kind of like keep the conversation going, keep
Mm-hmm.
the relationship warm so that they don't forget about you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right off the top of my head, there's probably those 5 templates. And then by templates, really, it's like um, most of the time you're still not going to just use it verbatim. Like as much as possible, you're going to try to like customize just 1 to 2 lines in each of those emails if there's something that you can actually personalize, right? For example, maybe based on your research, this NYU alum was in the same club as you when they were in school, or maybe I don't know, you guys were in the same sorority. I don't know if you're in a sorority. I just made that up, but like if there's something like that, like obviously you're gonna want to customize the email, right, to increase your response rate, and then like for people that, and that's where I think like this warm and cold section is gonna help, because like the definition of warm could also just be when you look them up, do you notice anything? Do you notice anything, any commonalities that you have with this person, right? It might not be that someone actually referred you, but it might just be like, hey, oh yeah, this person was in the same XYZ thing as me. And if that is, like, you can jot down what that is. And then when you start sending emails, you can separate it by saying, okay, well, let me first email all the warm people. Okay. And then you filter by warm. And then you're going to actually customize each of those emails one by one. Whereas if you, for everyone else, that's just cold meaning like they're on my list, but I have nothing in common with them aside from the fact that we're in the same school. Then for those, you don't have to customize the emails as much, right? Typically, if like there's nothing in common, then you can just use like the standard copy paste template. Except you got to swap out their names and stuff like that, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Also look up like mail merge, or it's called mail merge software if you don't already use that, because for the emails that you don't have to customize, there's software that will allow you to like basically fill out a spreadsheet kind of similar to what you have here already, and then they will automatically swap out certain fields for you, right? Like, oh, the entire email is the same, except I want you to swap out the name field, and I want you to swap out like the name of the bank that they work at, right? If you use that, it'll make sending cold emails, especially to people that are not your own connections, it'll make that process a lot faster and a lot easier, right? Which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it can end up saving you a lot of time in the long run, because if you think about it, you're probably going to end up sending emails to hundreds, if not, I have students that send emails to like thousands of bankers, right? So if you don't have to do that manually, that's going to free up a lot more time for you to do all the other stuff that we're going to be doing, like prepping for interviews and having actual phone conversations and, you know, keeping up your grades in school and so on and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions about anything I just said?
No. So no, I'll just do that for all the banks that I get, I should send them at least the initial contact email.
For everyone you add,
regardless of timeline.
Well, so for everyone you add to your list, if you add them to your list, that means that you're planning on reaching out to them at some point, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say you should reach out to every single. I wouldn't say like, so if we start your list with like 200 bankers, I wouldn't say you should reach out to all 200 bankers like right away, because again, like we don't know what the response rate is going to be yet, but you have to, this is the other thing that we should talk about, is like you have to think about how much time do you have to dedicate to networking each week, right? Like networking is one of those things that you should just be doing every single week consistently, no matter what, right? So you might say, I'm going to set aside 5 hours a week just for networking, or maybe it's not 5, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 7. It depends on your schedule, right? You decide. But like if you say, hey, I'm going to set aside 5 hours a week for networking, and 2.5 hours is going to be like me actually sending emails. And say like I spend 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, just organizing and sending emails. And then the other 2.5 hours is like my goal is to have 5 networking calls, 5 calls that are 30 minutes each every single week, right? Again, I'm making these numbers up. It doesn't have to be those numbers, but just for the sake of having an example. So you might say, okay, 5 hours a week. And then from there, if okay, my goal is to have 5 calls a week, then we're going to eventually try to back into, okay, how many emails do I need to send every week to get 5 calls, right? Because if we find, let's say, I'm getting 1 in 5 people to respond to me and agree to talk to me when I email, and my goal is to have 5 calls a week, that means I need to send out 25 emails a week, right? Which could be 5 emails a day. If I send out 5 emails a day, I'm getting 1 response, then that'll give me 5 calls a week, right? You see what I'm doing here? It's like, because a lot of people, like, it's just like arbitrary how many emails they send out. Just like, oh, I'm sending however I feel like today or whatever. But then you can be more methodical about it, right?
Yeah.
And so if we decide like, okay, we're gonna send 25 emails a week, then the next step there is like, okay, out of those 25 emails, like how many emails am I gonna send to each bank, right? Maybe this bank I'm only targeting these 3. Maybe this week I'm only targeting these 3 banks.
Yeah.
Next week I'm gonna go to next week I'm gonna, and if I feel good about how this week went, next week I'm gonna rotate to these this next set of banks, and so on and so forth, right? Or maybe, oh, like I wasn't able to connect with anyone from Bank of America this week, even though that was my goal. So next week I'm gonna keep Bank of America in the rotation. I'm gonna find more people to talk to at Bank of America. Like we're gonna have to like kind of go with the flow, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Good question though. What else?
No, I think that was it overall. Another thing that was just in my head also that I imagine influences it is like if it's an elite boutique or what bank, I don't know. What's your opinion? Like that will influence whether they would respond or not. Is that something to take into consideration? Like it would be harder for them to respond. Like I feel like at elite boutiques, I don't know what the procedures in like them like reaching out to people and like responding to emails versus like other banks.
I don't think that no, I don't
Yeah.
think we've noticed any differences in terms of elite boutique bankers being less likely to respond than bulge bracket bankers. I don't think we've seen that. So I think there's like there are banks like JP Morgan where 2 or 3 years ago they supposedly said that they're doing away with networking because they're trying to make it more equitable, right? Which is why they're implementing all these things like pi metrics and higher views, and they're trying to make it so that it's not like, oh, we're always recruiting from the same 5 target schools that already have a lot of bankers from there, right?
Yeah.
And so supposedly it's like, okay, we're not taking referrals from employees anymore, but then I don't know, in this most recent recruiting cycle, we actually had some clients that literally got like one of those official automated emails from JP Morgan saying like, you got a referral from one of our employees or something, which is like really confusing because they're kind of like saying one thing and doing another, right? And so, but I was gonna say like for the past couple of years, there have been bankers at JP that will tell students when they reach out, like, oh, like we don't really do this referral stuff anymore. So meaning like there's no point for you to network with me, right? So you might run into that, but for the most part, though, with all the top banks, like they expect you to network, right? Whether someone responds or not, I think it has less to do with like what type of bank they're at and more to do with just one, how busy they are at the time when you reach out to them, right? Which there's a little bit of luck there. Are they on a live deal or are they not, right? If they are,
Mm-hmm.
they're probably not gonna have as much time to talk to you, right? And then secondly, also just like how nice the person is and how generous they are with their time, right? Like some people will just never take networking calls no matter who it is, right? Because like they don't give a crap about that. They're like, I
Yeah.
don't get anything out of this. And then some people are more inclined to be helpful to students and whatnot, and they'll be more responsive. So, but that's why you have to just reach out to a bunch of people and try your luck because not everyone you reach out to is going to be is going to be helpful, right? Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Like
Yeah.
we control the things that we can control, which is like how well written are our emails? Are we targeting the right people? You know, and kind of like being strategic about who we go after. But there's some things that are going to be outside of our control, right? Which is like their personality and things like that that we just don't know about.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Um, so, any other questions?
No, that's it.
Okay. So why don't we do this? If you go and fill out the rest of your log, um, including the rough timeline for each of the banks and things like that. Factor in like the diversity programs if you are participating in those, and then just send me like an updated log when it's ready. Or
Okay.
actually, I guess this is in Google Docs already anyway, right? But just let me know when you have an updated log, and then we can take a quick look at it, and then let's start reaching out to these people because obviously it's already October 11th. I think for some of these banks, like the earlier ones, I mean RBC again already opened the application, but for the rest, there's going to be like probably some elite boutiques in both brackets that are only, my guess is maybe 3-ish months away, 2 to 3 months
Yeah.
away from starting their process, and so now is the time to start reaching out as soon as we can. So,
Okay.
and obviously, as you start reaching out, we can monitor the results of like, hey, are you getting responses? And as you start to have more conversations, we can talk about like how those conversations are going, and
Mm-hmm.
are these people offering to help you? Like, are you able to get them to do what you want them to do? And if not, like, what are some of the things that we need to tweak?
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, all right. So I guess that'll be it then. If you don't have any other questions, and then just let me know when you're done with this.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please subscribe to our channel or podcast so that you can get notified of all of our future episodes as well. If you'd like to apply to work with us so that we can help you in a similar way, feel free to reach out to our team at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. Talk soon.